I call to order this public meeting of Knox County Commission for Monday, June 1st, 2026. The purpose of this hearing is for discussion and public input on the proposed FY27 budget. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Rawls,
Present.
Commissioner Durrett,
Present.
Commissioner Oster,
Here.
Commissioner Jackson,
Here.
Commissioner Russell, here, Commissioner Hill, Commissioner Lee, Commissioner Thompson, Commissioner Fox,
Here.
Commissioner Jay, Commissioner Frazier.
Thank you. We have one person signed up to speak, Chris Treadwell. If you will state your name and county of residence, you have 5 minutes. You've got to hit the little person there.
Great. How about this? Thank you, Chris Treadwell, Knox County. Thanks for letting me speak. I see that the next and final budget public hearing is in 2 weeks, Monday, the 15th at 3 p.m. I would just ask that it could be moved to 5 when taxpayers get off work so they can participate. I appreciate it. Just a little side note. Okay. We heard repeatedly in the last election that our core services are underfunded and we have a looming debt crisis. This is a major issue that we feel the consequences of every day and requires cutting unnecessary nonprofit handouts. The county budget should prioritize services that create the most good for the most people. There are over 4,500 nonprofits in Knox County. They all fundraise through private donations. It's not fair to pick and choose your favorites to give tax money to when the roads are in need of repair. United Way is the first one on the list. It has a $5 billion budget. It's a $5 billion nonprofit in the United States. And if they truly are a charitable organization, they should not be leeching $700,000 a year from our budget. They have the ability to fundraise the necessary capital for their projects from private donors. We have 50 private schools in Knox County. Why does one of them, Freedom Schools, get funding and not the rest of them? 69% of our budget goes to schools, yet enrollment has declined. The school budget is overinflated, yet additional school-related projects are taking from the general fund meant for public safety and infrastructure. Also, $35,000 is being given to an organization that supports illegal immigration and encourages people to disrupt federal agents on social media. Centro Hispano does not benefit the vast majority of people in Knox County. They, in fact, restrict their services based on race. Why should public funds go to a nonprofit that doesn't serve 94% of the county based on racial discrimination? The same goes for $75,000 of wasteful spending to the Beck Center, $50,000 to the Asian Cultural Center. These are race-based nonprofits that have funding operations that can raise funds just like any special interest private company from the people who go to those places and the people who want to donate to those places. There's no need to give money to these niche organizations that don't benefit the average American. If we truly have unpaid debt and are underfunding our roads and sheriff's office, we should not give away millions to nonprofits who are supposed to fundraise privately or to unnecessary side projects that don't benefit the taxpayer. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. That was the only person that we had signed up. We do not have a list of specific department heads or officials wishing to speak, but I do see several in the audience, as well as our finance department. If any commissioner has a question, feel free to turn on your light at any time. I'll begin with Director Caldwell to offer comments to the commission. He wasn't. There you are.
Yep. Thank you all so much. So before you is Mayor Jacobs' FY27 operating budget and the FY27 capital improvement plan. As we've discussed with you all in our individual meetings, this budget does not have a tax increase. It keeps the property tax rate constant at 1.5540, which will stay that until reappraisal happens in August, and then we will adjust it at that point. The overall budget has a just short of a $31 million increase overall, which is about 2.7%. Once again, this year, we split natural growth with schools. The general fund increased by about 10.3 million, or 4.3%. This budget includes approximately 3% raise for county employees. It does continue the funding level of the defined service contracts in the general fund. This is year 2 of the 3-year contract. And then the 5-year capital improvement plan that invests about $334 million into county and school infrastructure. But keep in mind that only the first year gets adopted. It's just a 5-year look. And so that's basically an overview. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, and thank you for your team for doing such a great job. Commissioners, Commissioner Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually have a lot of questions. I've looked over the budget pretty thoroughly, and these aren't, what I'm asking now are simply questions. These are not concerns. I just want to make sure that I actually have an understanding of what some of these are. So just because I'm asking about it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily opposed to it. It's just that I'm trying to figure out and wrap my head around what's going on. When I look through this, I noticed that we have a new department number for empath, and we have given it $500,000, and I wasn't really sure what that was. If you could give us a little detail.
Sure. So the city and county and the state of Tennessee, along with the local hospitals, entered into an agreement 3 years ago now, I think it is, to do a mental health short-term inpatient center just beside of KPD headquarters. And so the state graciously funded the majority of the capital and part of the operating cost for the first few years. So we're just picking up that cost now. And we do think that in the next year or so that we may get to a point to where the income from that facility will support itself, and we won't have to fund it, but in the short term, as when we approach the state about this collaboration, us and the city both said that we would shore up the shortfall, and that's that shortfall this year.
Thank you. And then just kind of going down the list, I've just picked some of the items that increased significantly, just wanting to kind of get my head wrapped around them. I noticed that parks in total went up about $180,000. Do you know exactly, specifically what additional items that we're going to be doing there? That
I would tell you the majority of that would be in salary and benefits. So if you take 3% raise for them, I'm sure the vast majority of that would be salary and benefits. We kept most operational expenses flat from year to year. So the vast majority of that would be salary and benefits.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So just, I have been requested to give the department numbers. For the empath, it was 101-3367. It was the first one on page 15. And then parks actually encompasses 101-4801 all the way down to 101-4857. It's also on page 15. I think a lot of my other questions related to some of this, it probably does relate specifically to some level of increase for salaries, so I'm going to skip some of those that I see are in the 3 to 4% range. But I also see a new department, 101-6033, solar maintenance. We've not had that before, just curious what that new item is. And
We do have a number of solar panels that we maintain, and so we get energy efficiency savings off those that go to pay for certain things, but there are certain maintenance items that are upkeep on that, and so we budgeted for that this year.
where were those expensed prior to this year, this upcoming year? I would assume they were absorbed by the individual departments like parks or,
So there are revenues that offset it. So in the past, we have split this expense with schools because there are schools that have solar panels as well. So a lot of hours we just offset with the revenue. What we chose to do this year was to be more explicit with it and show the revenue and the expense. And so that's what makes that up.
thank you. Again, a lot of my questions are just related, trying to determine, get my head wrapped around where some of the numbers came from. The next one is going to be item 101-6625. I noticed that it went up, well, it more than doubled. It went up 195,000.
The increase in that org code relates to an increased funding for warming centers for the coming year.
So that's to fund warming centers?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because the requested amount by the departments was 450,000, and last year it was 175. Is
It was
there,
actually 162.
no, the actual is
Well,
175.
that was for 20.
Oh, for 25?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
But,
great
yeah.
question. So the full amount was what they had requested for warming centers. As we went through the budget process and we sat down with the city, we both agreed what the funding level would be. So it wasn't to their requested amount, but it was an increase overall.
The next item I have a question about is 101-69551, which is the PBA. We're going up $1 million from 11 to 12. That's actually almost a 10% increase, so that's more than salaries. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yes, so what we have been doing over the last few years is we are getting our building expense back, let me rephrase it. We are getting the budgetary expense for building expenses to what it truly is. What we have done in the past is we would slowly increase it and then make up for the difference in the end. And so if you look at what our total building expense is for FY '27, we budgeted 12. I think the total budget was 13.4, and so we're trying to close that gap. And so when you see a bigger increase there, basically over the past few years, we had not budgeted the full amount for building expenses, and so we're catching up to that. So that's why you see a bigger increase there.
So to put it in layman's terms, we under budgeted in the past, so we're trying to be more.
We're trying, yeah, so we usually get as you know, there is a rebate that comes back for things that don't get spent. And so that sometimes will net that out, but we were not close to budgeting for what we we're needing to. So what we would end up doing at the end of the year is do a budget transfer from general fund over to the building operations fund to make this up. And so we're building this expense budget to where it needs to be, which lowers the transfer at the end of the year.
Madam Chair? I have more, because I'm trying to really utilize this session to learn as much as I can and to share it also with the public, but I don't want to be I have several other questions, but I don't want to be a hog. Do you want me to give
That's up to
yield the
Commissioner
floor,
Fox.
or, and then come back, or?
I'll ask a few if Madam
Okay.
Chair pleases, and then I'll,
Commissioner Fox?
thank you, Madam Chair. Director Caldwell, what was the state funding for Knox County for education during this current fiscal year?
So what we had budgeted for FY '26 related to TISA so we budgeted 332.4 million plus an additional 4.7, which you would add those two together. So that would be the total budget for TISA. Now, Ron or Joe could tell you if that number has been tweaked by the state, whether that is coming in as it was budgeted, or if it's a little higher or a little lower. That total would be 337.1.
Okay.
It's coming. So it goes, what he's saying is their estimates go up and down each quarter, so they won't know if that number was right until the end of the fourth quarter. So, but from a budgetary standpoint was about 337.1.
What did the state pay through TISA in 2025?
$325 million, just a touch over that.
Okay. But what is being budgeted for 2027? I guess I could, what page is that on? I can look at that with you. Here we go. Or is that's not included in the,
Right at 339. So the state number of 345 includes some other state funding. So the TISA number is 341.6.
okay.
And so what I would say, just so you all are aware, that is an estimate from when this budget was done. So the schools will get other estimates as time goes along. They probably got an estimate in May. They'll get one in June. You get one in July. We'll get a final in June. So we'll see where that ends up at. But from a budgetary standpoint, we had budgeted 341.6.
Okay.
So there was a bigger increase from state funding from 25 to 26 than there was from 26 to 27.
And so, and that's based on the average daily membership, which, yes, which,
He's saying yes.
but the, I guess the average daily the amount that the state provides to the county every year increases, even if the average daily membership is decreasing. Is that true?
Yeah, come on. He's the expert on TISA, not me.
Ron McPherson, Knox County Schools. Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner. What we have received, Chris is right. We based that at the time of budget development on the latest estimate. Unfortunately, the estimate that came in right behind that is somewhat lower. It's not unusual for those estimates to kind of go up and down as the state is working through this, because a lot of this depends on physical capacity, right, and their calculation with that. Yes, even though the ADMs, average daily membership, has decreased, so far there's a slight increase in state revenue simply because of it's a bigger pool at the state level, but it's still coming in at less than 1%. So this is, from a percentage basis, one of the lower increases that we've seen in a long time.
So again, I mean, just kind of to sum it up, there are fewer students, but the level of revenue we are receiving from the state is still going up, just because on a per student basis, they're providing more money per student. Is that?
That's correct, and simply because of that, the growth in the total amount at the state level, right?
Okay.
Which is a product of sales tax and some other things. So yeah, when the state goes through and they look at the ADMs, they look at fiscal capacity of like 140 some odd school districts, it's from that they allocate the funding, and so we should know for sure. Unfortunately, it's going to be at the end of June. There were times even before TISA, when we had BEP, we wouldn't know until July, even after the budget. So the state, sounds like I'm ragging on the state a little bit. It does create some complications for districts, because as we're going through the budget development process, you're having to kind of guess where your numbers are, and locally we really don't have that problem. It's still an estimate, but Chris's department, our department, we work so cooperatively together. We compare numbers, we compare trends, and so we have a pretty good feel for the local end of it. But unfortunately, the state not so much.
Okay. And how does the transfer of funds take place from the county bank account, so to speak, to the Board of Education bank account? Is it
Right.
one big check once a year?
It's in the it's in the countywide trustee pool.
Okay.
So when the dollars from the state come in, it goes directly into that pool.
Right. I'm talking, what about on the local revenue? Is that provided on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis?
Daily, it'd be daily. So
Yeah.
depending on when the revenue comes in. So if it's property tax, as property tax comes in, as you approve a tax rate, that's how it's divvied out. And so that part is daily. Sales tax is monthly. There are some revenues that are quarterly, so it kind of varies. There's no one thing for everything. It's just kind of a variation.
All right, thank you. That's the questions I have on education. I think Commissioner Russell already touched on this a little bit. 101-6625, Office of Housing Stability. Is that what you were discussing earlier, Commissioner Russell? The warming centers. Yeah, the warming centers. That's okay.
Yes, sir.
I guess how was the request made? That's a pretty, that's a fairly large increase. That's a very large increase. And I think warming centers have been provided historically. So could you relate how the request was presented to the county for a $300,000 give or take increase in that budget?
So that's the total amount's not all warming centers. Part of it is operating. The 200,000 is warming centers. And the rest of that amount is for the expansion of services under the bridge there at Broadway.
Do you know, has the city increased their contributions?
They went up by $500K.
Is there, I guess, a justification for the requested expansion? Like, how was it described? It's really,
Yeah, so a lot of that is just due to an increase in the number of homelessness. And so as we do budget requests, they make their case, and as does other entities or departments. And so this is one of the ventures that we fund jointly with the city. And so we sit down with the city and see what we're going to agree to fund that we're both comfortable with.
okay. Did the Office of Housing Stability provide like a written request? Is it something that the county commission could look at that was provided by them?
Yeah, there's an email that we received from Aaron Freed that if you would like, we can forward to commission.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that. And another question I have is different topic, and we touched on this at the meeting with you and Mayor Jacobs. I just wanted to, for the sake of the public and people who are in attendance, just talk about the convenience center issue and why it's gone up by about, 1.1 million or so.
Yeah. So related to convenience centers, and we'll be talking about that more in the months to come. Our hauling, I think it was the hauling contract, basically doubled in cost. And so it leads to what we're spending on convenience centers to go up by about 1.2 total. And so the revenues from convenience centers do not cover the expense of convenience centers. By state law, we've got to have 3 convenience centers. We operate 7. And so what we are doing, we have a consultant that we are doing a waste stream study with, and that probably sounds as exciting as it does when I say it. And so a waste stream study will come back and give us options to move forward. So we will come back to County Commission with a litany of options to say we could do everything from only operate 3 centers to we could do whatever the other options are. And so I'm not a waste stream study expert. Jim will handle that, and we'll bring that before you. In order to make this solid waste budget balance, we did a $600,000 transfer from the general fund, which is typically not there. We used $600,000 of fund balance in solid waste, which is about half of what's in their fund balance. And then there's a transfer from engineering and public works in the tune of about $700,000, maybe $775,000. So when we talk about convenience centers and solid waste, it's a really good discussion. The options that will be presented, probably nobody will love, just to be frank. But it's something that we have to solve, and we have been dealing with this for some time and thinking about how we could solve it. It really got to the brink when that hauling contract doubled, and then you had to do something. And it wasn't just us. I think the cities did the same. And so it's just an issue that we've got to look for a solution. And I think it's one of those, to me, it's a conversation that we bring a consultant forth, give everybody options, and let's look at needs and wants of our community and see what we want to do. But we can make it work this year if we so desire, but moving forward, there's going to have to be a different solution, or we're going to keep taking from either EPW or the general fund just to make this whole. But I'm glad you brought it up. It's something that when we presented this budget, we wanted to stand out because it's something that has to be discussed, and we have to come up with a solution. And as Jim works with his consultant, I think that will be coming in the next 2 to 3 or 4 months.
And so, I mean, I'm sure, you know, the citizen doesn't maybe think past, hey, I took it to the convenience center. They don't understand, we don't have a permanent place, a landfill in Knox County. So we have to do something with what they bring to the convenience center.
You're correct. We do not own a landfill. We know one option could be to build a transfer station, which could offset some of the waste that's getting to the landfill, but you can't build one of those overnight. And then we also know a big issue with our convenience centers are what's known as C&D waste, which is construction and demolition. So when contractors take that waste to a convenience center that's filling up our boxes as to use their lingo, and that's just extra cost for us. And so one option they will say to you all is you should eliminate all C&D material. Now, easier said than done, right? I mean, we're going to have somebody at a convenience center saying to John Doe, you can't bring that in here. And that's not going to be a pleasant conversation, right? And then they're going to call Commissioner Fox and say, I pay my taxes, I should be able to put C&D material in convenience centers. So I think it's for us, we have to do a lot of education, but I think we also have a robust discussion about what all options are.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will try not to ask any questions that he's already asked. Let's see. Let's go to page 20. I noticed that we have a new department number 277, Records Management. That was always in the IT department before, or kind of surrounded by the IT department. If you go back to page 16, it was always kind of included in that before. Can you tell me why it was separated out? Because I noticed that the IT budget actually still went up, but then we also have this additional records management fund. Just trying to understand.
Yes, it's because I can't say no to Zach Webb. Actually, the reason behind that is we want to treat records management like an internal service fund, simply like we do think of tech support. So if a department calls tech support, that gets billed back to the department. And so we have an issue that we're trying to solve. We have a ton of paper records at Knox Central that we maintain, and we need to digitize a lot of records, and we're going to start that process. But before we digitize records, we had to say to departments, do you know how many boxes of records you have at Knox Central? And by the way, you have X amount, and this is going to be charged in your budget. And then they start freaking out because I had no idea, and I can't pay for this. So we've built into the department's budget monies to pay for their boxes. What we want them to do, though, is go through and destroy said boxes, and so that process has started. We have found that a lot of the inventory over there, probably did not have to be kept, so we can shred those boxes. But then we need, once we shrink that footprint, we want to then digitize so we don't fill it back up. And so for us, it's treating records management like an internal service fund. We do that with vehicle service center. If you have a county vehicle and you take it to Jim's place, they'll service it and then it's billed back. We want records to be the same way, so so departments have an understanding of the number of records they have and will take some ownership in keeping that number low. But I'm glad you picked up on that.
Thank you. On page 23, I'm just kind of going down the list here, moving my way through the booklet. I just want to reconfirm, and I know Commissioner Fox just spoke on this, and we also had some discussion on this in our last finance meeting. From what is the gross numbers that are kind of showing here, it appears the proposed budget is to go up 17+ million in schools, but the state of Tennessee is only going up approximately 3.9 of that. So in essence, 3.3 of that is discretional. In other words, it's not required by state law.
Well, not required by state law as it relates to maintenance of effort, yes.
Thank you.
The other new, the other new state mandate is to get starting teacher pay to $50K. And so if you ever, I'm going to probably get killed for saying this. If you ever watch the State of the State address and Governor whoever stands up and says, I'm giving teachers a 4% raise. We've all saw it. So governors from every party do it, and they mandate a certain teacher pay. The frustrating part about that for people in local government is the state doesn't pay that. They may pay it in certain counties, but in a county our size where they say we have fiscal ability to pay it, we end up paying, if I'm wrong, Ron can stop me, the state pays about 40% of the teacher pay. We pick up 60. So when the state says we're going to get teacher pay, starting teacher pay to $50K, the bulk of that increase is on us. So the only way you can get there is to increase maintenance of effort, because the state is mandating starting teacher pay to be $50K. And what they're going to say is, if you don't get starting teacher pay to $50K, then we reserve the right to hold your revenue. So, to your point, yes, if you look at state revenue in this budget from last budget, it's not went up that much. But what is still there is the state mandate to get teacher pay to $50K.
Thank you. Again, at this point, I'm reserving my comments till the next meeting. At this point, I'm just seeking information. So, also on page 23, I see that there was something called payment from general purpose schools. Apparently, it was $4 million in 25, dropped down to $1 million in 26, and now down to $600,000 for 27. Could you, is that the amount that they are applying toward the debt, that they are actually budgeting to pay toward the debt out of the general fund, or am I?
No, you're right. So That is a couple of things. Yes, what the schools can't fund with their portion of property tax that goes into the debt service fund to service their debt, then what they have to do is do a transfer to cover the rest. And so that is an estimate of what that amount's going to be. The reason it was higher in '25 was they were paying the county back for was it some other debt, Ron? I was trying to remember. It was higher in '25 for a reason.
Right, a lot of this is timing of the issuance of bonds.
Yeah, so he mentioned the timing of the use of bonds. So, I've been asked, so I'll get on this a little bit now. Chris, the debt service budget, it's staying the same. We keep on hearing there's this debt that's coming due, and that number's going to go up. How from 26 to 27 did that number not increase? So it's simple but yet complex. It's really is staying the same as last year because we have not issued the bonds for FY '25's capital plan or current year of FY '26's capital plan. Okay, Chris, why have we not issued those bonds? We not issued those bonds because when you issue bonds, you have spend down requirements, meaning that the day that you issue bonds in 6 months, you've got to have 6 months, you have to have 10% worth of expenses to draw down. Then in 12 months, you've got to have spent 50% of those bonds to draw down. 18 months is 75%, and 24 months is 100%. If you don't hit those spend down marks set by the IRS, then you cannot keep your interest revenue that you're investing those bonds in. So we did not hit spend down on the FY '23 bonds. We missed FY '23, the 6-month number, which was 10%, we missed it. You say, well, how do you miss that? You issue bonds and then projects get delayed. If projects get delayed and you don't hit those spend down marks, that's how you miss that. So what we did strategically was went ahead and spent everything in the '24 bonds. We came back to the '23 bonds. We're going to probably wait and issue the '25 bonds in the spring of '27. And then we will issue the '26 bonds in the spring of '28. So we've got a schedule that we think that we'll adhere to so we can hit our spend down numbers and be able to keep that interest revenue that we invest when we issue bonds. But because of that, we've not issued bonds for '25 and '26, thus there's not been debt service payments for those bonds. And so that's why from '25 to from '26 to '27, it's flat. What will happen is as we issue that debt, we will continue to climb. If you look in the back of your book on page 51, we still think we get to right at $100 million in 2031. It's like 99.8, with about 51 of that being schools and about 49 of that being the county. But so it is a little hard to explain, but that bonds are multifaceted, and really what you're doing when you're looking at a debt service budget and a summary of debt is you're getting an estimate. You're getting it because you don't truly know when you're going to issue those bonds. Some counties aren't as fortunate as us, and they have to issue bonds the minute that it turns July 1. We are fortunate enough to have healthy cash reserves that we don't have to do that. And so, so all that plays into the number of payments from the general purpose school fund. I do believe in the coming years in 29, 30, and 31, that number will increase. So you will see a payment going up. The schools have two ways to pay for that, right? It's a transfer, or they could say, we want to strategically move a penny from property tax away from the general purpose school fund over to debt service, and it's allocated for schools. So that's an option that they could do, but typically what I would say they would do is do it as a transfer. And let me
Thank
say
you.
this, so you know, there's a reason that it's good to allocate a higher number of pennies on the property tax to debt service than to do a transfer. Is anytime a TIF is approved, okay, so somebody's building something, they get a TIF loan that gets approved. The amount that has to be paid is the debt service amount of property taxes. Our amount's about 25%. The city's amount is 7 or 8%. So we get to keep much more of our money on a TIF than what the city does, because we have more of an allocation going to debt service. And so we get to keep more of that.
Thank you. I'm going to keep going unless there's somebody else wanting to ask questions. Also in regards to schools we did receive the ADM for 23, 24, 25, 26, and estimated for 27. Can we get that for the year that ended 22 and the year that ended 21 also? Just for, I'm a percentage person and I love to play with numbers. So just kind of for statistical purposes, appreciate it. Okay, on page 32, no, I'm sorry, page 30. The capital outlay, we have approximately $5,167,000 that is for various items that are going to last more than a year, but are, in my opinion, kind of short-term items. For instance, Christmas lights. There's Christmas lights, there's motorcycles and stuff like that. I noticed that we're funding that by debt service. $5 million of debt service. I mean, that seemed, I guess, have we typically been funding short-term items out of debt service?
Yeah, so what we do, just so you're aware, is we approve capital outlay, and this is what we consider our 5-year life capital outlay. So we issue it with our bonds, but we pay for it in 5 years. And so for a period of time, we would issue a separate capital outlay note. But what we have done in the past 5 to 7 years is we go ahead and issue it with our bonds, our 20-year bonds, but we pay for it in the first 5 years. So it's still paid for with debt. It's just not a capital outlay note. It's paid for with debt, but it's still paid for within the first 5 years.
Okay. On page 32, there were a couple of items in the hotel motel tax fund Specifically, there was one called Tourism Enhancements. It's 1.1 million in one area and 200,000 in another area. I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit of insight on what tourism enhancements might entail.
So what that will entail is we've had conversations internally with Parks and Rec and some of our other departments that do things that could be viewed as tourism enhancements. And so we believe, and we think we can get approval for it, that some expenses related to parks, whether it's capital expenses, or operations in some cases, that we can cover some park expenses where they are bringing in national tournaments, and we can maybe improve fields, do some additions in places, and so that basically has been set aside more so that we think we can utilize that money for parks, and even in some cases, maybe even engineering. We have used hotel, motel tax dollars in the past for a water line that was related to a place of tourism. And so all those things we get approved through the state and our auditors, but we set that aside for said purposes. We've talked to Director Mack about it from a park standpoint and Director Snowden, and so we want to give them the chance to find some projects where that may work.
And I said I wasn't going to give any commentary, but I love this. I absolutely love that you are thinking outside the box in ways that we can help Knox County with funds that we have to utilize in a certain way. Thank you very much for that. So let's see, on page 41, there is $82 million in recommended projects in 2027 for Knox County schools. I want to make sure that I understand this correctly. So that $82 million, that is in addition to the previous budget we just spoke about, correct?
This is, if you turn to page 48, it would detail out what those projects are. This is what their $717 million budget is operating, and it's just their general, what we would call the school's general fund budget. It's just their general operating budget. This is strictly their capital request and capital budget, and the detail of that's on page 48. The vast majority of what this is for the construction of the Mechanicsville, Lonsdale, Beaumont solution.
Page 42. So looking at the sources and uses of funds here, am I understanding correctly that primarily based on, we're going to be going into debt an additional $63 million in 27. So $63 million, we're going to, instead of decreasing our debt, we're going to be increasing our debt $63 million in 2027. Is that correct?
You know, so when we, yes, approving this capital plan for 27 does increase our bonded debt by nearly $63 million. Now, we won't issue the 27 bonds for probably a year and a half or so or longer, and so you won't really see that impact. And to the point, one page that I really like, that looks at debt a little differently is on page 6. It basically breaks down debt from Knox County General Government and the Board of Education. And when I looked at this from, and these, well, you can see the numbers in front of you, but if you look at 2020, where the county debt was 373.1, school debt was 273, our total debt was 646. So if you look at that, if you go down to 2031 and you assume we're going to spend this 5-year plan as it's prescribed in here, the county debt would go down to 338.4, which is a 9.3% reduction in debt.
Could you say that number again, please?
I'm sorry?
Could you say that percentage again?
Yes. If you look from 2020 to 2031 on the county side, it's a 9.31% reduction on county debt. If you look at the school debt, it goes from 273 to 458.6 approximately, which is basically a 67.9% increase over that period of time. Now, granted, we're only going to approve through 2027, but I'm just saying if this were the case. But the total debt in those years from 2020 to 2031 is about 23.3%. We have looked at debt a number of ways. Everybody, nobody likes debt. I understand that. If you look at our debt service budget as a percentage of our total operating budget, it's like less than 8% or right around 8%, which is really low. You want it less than 10%. So we're below that norm. And I sent you all out an email a week or so ago, maybe longer than that, where how the state looks at financial metrics. And one of it looks at debt service as a percentage of appraised values. And we were in really good shape there. So I don't disagree with you personally. I don't like debt either. But I think from where we are, we're in a good spot on the debt that we're issuing. And once we get to 2034, so we talk a little bit now, if you want, about the balloon debt that's coming, and we're going to reach up and hit about $100 million total. We have reserves that's going to cover the general county debt portion of that. It will take those reserves pretty low. If we get to, when we get to 2034, once we get to 2035, there's a $10 million drop in our debt service payments, which means for us at that point, we have capacity to do more road projects, capacity to do whatever projects that we deem. In the short term, we just got to make sure that we can get there, and we can get there because we do have healthy reserves. But I think if you look, you mentioned on that page, the county debt portion of that, of course, of that total is 34 of the 116 on page 42. And so, and if you go to page 50 in your book, and you go down to 2027, you'll see that we're issuing 33 million, but we're going to pay 27.7. So our net increase to debt is really 5.3 million, as to where the school increase is about 35. And so how our state is set up with debt is schools does not have the legal ability to issue bonds. So counties or cities have to issue the bonds on behalf of the schools. And so what we set up then is we try to show how the schools pay their debt service. And so if you look at our at our balance sheet, right? So if you ever get bored and look at our ACFR and you're like Shane, an investment banker, we look terrible because we get all of the school debt on our balance sheet, but we don't get any of their assets. So it looks crazy, but it's just how our state has set up that schools can't issue bonds. And so the rating agencies know that, and it's something that we have to explain, and we never have an issue with it, with getting our bonds sold, and we always get good rates, and we get good participation. It's just a finicky way that the state makes us look from a financial statement standpoint. I'll get off my soapbox.
And I know that we were wanting to try to keep I think this was only budgeted for like an hour or so, so I'm gonna try to just ask two more quick questions, and Angela's, yeah,
Follow-up question to what Chris was.
were you gonna ask him about the Fed rate?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
So, just to clarify, something you were saying is that we will be done with the increase in the bond payments in the 2034, 2035.
34 is when what I always refer to as, they're called wraparound bonds. And so there was 4 or 5 bond issues that had a 27 to 28 year life. And so those all roll off in 2034. And so in 2035, there's capacity. It's just getting to that point to where you can take advantage of that capacity. And,
But in the meantime, we're going to be balancing our budget by having negative cash flow and dipping into our savings, correct?
well, I would say this, what we have done, because we knew that this increase in debt service was coming. It's not like it's ever caught us off guard. We knew what was coming. And so we have strategically increased the debt service reserves, or fund balance is what I always like to call it, to prepare for this. And so we set at the end of FY '25, debt service had about 34 million in fund balance. I would tell you at the end of FY '26, in 30 days, I think that number will increase again. And so we will then have 36, 37 million setting in reserves ready to absorb what's coming. And so as you look, just so you know, as you look, get the page that I like. Where's it? It's not there. It's on a different page. If you look on page 51, I'll use this as an example, and just focus on the Knox County general obligation debt side of it, which is if you're looking at it in thirds, it'll be the first third. You see that in '25, we spent 42.9 million. In '22, in '26, we're budgeted to spend 42.9, basically the same. '27, that number's 41.5. You see that number gets in 2031 up to about 49. And so our revenue capability right now is pretty level at 2026. We're about 40 to 42 is what we've got coming in. So our shortfall isn't great. I think what's happening is people is seeing this debt service number rising to 100 million, and currently it's at 86, thinking, oh, the county's got to eat all of that. How can they pay for that? Keep in mind, the schools pay for their part, right? So it's only the county part that has to be made up there. They know their increased payments are coming, so they'll do a transfer to cover their difference. We just have to cover the county difference. And so, I don't view it as big of an issue coming as some do, right? Sure, it increases, but we have reserves set aside for this. Do we have to be cautious in what we're issuing debt on? Absolutely. We can't, as an example, what we propose to you all, we're proposing for a reason. If commission chose to amend this capital plan and add to it, then that could be a problem. But we will design a 5-year plan here henceforth to get us to 2034 to be okay. And so if, with all due respect, if somebody had an idea that I thought would blow that up, I would jump up and down and say, I recommend you not do this. And so, now, does that mean that there may be some lean years as it relates to capital outlay, as it relates to 20-year bonds for engineering? It could right now. Can we find some additional revenue sources to help? Potentially. I think we are budgeting in the capital plan as if, what do we got to do to get to 2034? Because then once we get to 2035, you've built up your, if we continue to increase our sources of revenue and property taxes from growth, like we talk about this a lot, that we have constantly saw growth in property taxes, right? So, page, I'll get there, I'm sorry. Page 35 is a look at current property tax revenue history. If you look from 2015 to 2027, we will have increased property tax revenue from $248.3 million to $312.3 million. In that time frame, there has been no tax increases. That's all from growth, okay? So we have lived off growth. And so if we continue to see growth, we will continue to see growth in our revenue sources and debt service and the general fund and things like that, which will help to even shrink that gap that we're seeing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, could you give us maybe an analysis showing that once these bond payments go up, you know, how the reserve balance will decrease, and then once the reserve balance gets to zero, you know, how we're gonna fill that gap?
Yeah, I'll send you, tonight or tomorrow, I will send you, we have a really good chart that we got from our financial advisors that shows that decrease, and you can see it. And it shows how these 5 years kind of add on to that. And so I'll send that out, and then you can see where there's a really big dip. And then I've also got a sheet that I do that shows how I project our debt service fund balance to be reduced over the coming few years. And once again, when I do it worst case scenario. And typically we come in better than worst case. Thank you.
Commissioner Rolls?
Mr. Caldwell, I did have a question about the reserves. Good question, Shane. Will we ever take the reserves to zero? And if we don't take the reserves to zero, like what is the trigger amount? I was always under the assumption there is a dollar amount that we hit that we have to keep the reserves at. And I guess I'll start there. Is that correct?
Yes. So first, it's Chris. It's not Mr. Caldwell, please.
Mr. Caldwell.
So there is a lot of confusion as we talk about reserves, okay? Most people think of reserves and they think of the rainy day fund. And for me, that is fund balance only in the general fund. So the general fund is what makes up what we call the rainy day fund. It's a term that I hate, so just bear with me. Currently, in our general fund, those reserves unassigned, meaning that they're not set aside for anything, set at $93.8 million, okay? We have a fund balance policy that commission approved that says that needs to be at least 3 months of revenue or expenses, whichever is higher, I think is how it reads. So we're probably a little over 4 months currently. Now, does that mean we should spend that down to 3? No, it's not what that means. If you read a report that we get from Moody's or S&P when it comes to our rating agencies, they will tell you that our above-average debt burden is offset by our healthy reserves. Thus, we have a AA+ bond rating. We don't want to do anything that would risk lowering that bond rating, because if you do, then you're going to pay more in debt service. And if we lower the bond rating, I'm going to get fired. Scott's going to write about it, because we only write about when you get downgraded, not when you get upgraded, right? So we're AA+, AA1 by Moody's. The only place to go from there, there's one spot higher than that, and it's AAA. It's the only where you can go. They've discussed, S&P has discussed moving us to AAA in the past. And I always say, time out. If you're going to move us to AAA, let's make sure that we can stay. And so I think that's important. So, but we have $93.8 million in general fund. I just mentioned we've got $34 million in the debt service fund. All of our funds have reserves or fund balance. That is strategic on our part. Some counties would, and we hear this, they put all reserves back in the general fund, right? They want all that there. They don't want it split out. Listen, we strategically, I'll give you an example. We've got, we are self-insured on health insurance, right? So that's very important. Currently, we've got, at the end of 25, we have $13 million in that reserve. But that's important because we actually spent almost $5.8 million of that last year, because things happen and you can't prepare for certain things, right? A handful of employees have certain things that happen, and it's just what it is. So healthy reserves keep us in a really good financial state. And some places do, listen, we will always show budgeted use of fund balance. If you look in the budget book right now, you'll see budgeted use of fund balance. You will see on page 33 that we are proposing to spend $5.1 million in the general fund this year out of fund balance. You'll see that we're proposing to spend $3.4 million in debt service in this budget out of fund balance. We budget very conservatively as if we're going to spend 100% of expenses. We budget very conservatively on debt service as if we're going to pay a higher interest rate than we probably are paying. At the end of the day, we're not going to spend $5 million out of the reserves in the general fund. Unless the economy has a downturn, then maybe we do. But if things stay status quo, we will not spend $5 million. We probably will add to it. And so instead of using fund balance, we're adding to fund balance. Debt service is the same way. We're not going to use that money in debt service because we're not issuing some of that debt, so it's going to offset. But reserves are important. No, we would never spend reserves down to zero. If we were spending reserves down to zero, something terrible has happened. We've got a policy that says we won't spend below a certain amount. GFOA, who is our, who oversees everything that we do, basically says you should have 2 months. So we went with 3 months, a little bit higher than what they say. But reserves are important to have. If you have healthy cash reserves, then you don't have to worry about paying your bills July through September until property tax notices go out. There are some counties that will issue TANs, which are tax and anticipation notes, because they can't make payroll. They can't pay their bills until property tax hits. We never want to be that. And so healthy reserves are very important. And from a finance department standpoint, we will always be protective of those reserves because we know how it offsets certain things. Answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
So just to follow up to that, Chris, you were referring to the unassigned reserves, but could the debt service reserve fund be depleted?
Yes, so debt service can so we do not have a fund balance policy for special revenue funds. So yes, we could spend that down to zero. It's the general fund that we would never spend down to zero. We could and probably will. You'll see if we're all still here in the 2031 to 2034, we'll see that reserve come down. But we have planned it that way, and we think we can make do until we get there.
Commissioner Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of quick things, and then, so when we're talking about issuing debt, and I just saw this on the internet, and I know you can't believe half of what you see on the internet, but I saw that there's a possibility that the Fed rate could go up. Probably Commissioner Jackson could give his opinion on whether he thinks that's going to happen or not. But if it does go up,
Our economists say that there's one rate increase potentially this year.
that's what I thought. So it potentially could go up. Do we watch that closely to make sure that we are timing our bond issues
We
to get
do.
the best rates probably?
Yes, 100%. So we will watch to make sure that when we issue the bonds, we can hit our spend down request. We also watch to determine when we think is best time to hit the market. And we rely on our advisors for that. And so we would watch that. A lot of times the bond market won't be completely impacted by that, as Shane probably knows. It's kind of baked in a little bit over a period of time, but we'll watch it just to make sure that we're in a good time to go.
And to clarify, the bonds that we purchase are not variable rate tied to the Fed. We're
20-year
looking
fixed rate bonds.
20-year fixed rate.
Correct. And I don't know what those rates are currently because we've not issued bonds in so long, which is a positive thing. But we typically get a really good rate because we've got a AA+ bond rating. And but yes, we're very boring. We want to do 20-year fixed rate bonds with what we would call as close to possible as level principal payments. Now, it's not going to be exactly because we have to factor in those big payments coming due, but we structure them in that way. Since I've been the finance director, we've not issued variable rate debt. I'm not saying that we never would, but we haven't to this point because the market's not been in a place to where you would have issued variable rate debt.
I also have a question, or I guess more of just a general, making sure that I do understand. On page 19, in regards to the engineering and public works, if I recall properly, our current budget, and this is from the information that we received at the last finance meeting, we are currently able to pave about 45 miles per year, or that's what we paved last year. To maintain our roads properly, we need to be repaving approximately 75 to 80 miles a year. And based on the cost that we were given, an average cost of about 150 to 160,000 per mile, Director Snowden estimated that to properly maintain our roads, his budget would need to be increased about 14 to 15 to meet optimum desirability. And I just wanted to make sure that I had written all that information down properly.
Yes, Commissioner Russell, that's accurate. To keep our overall condition index, that ASTM standard that we use to evaluate all our roads, right now, our average OCI is about 73 and a half. To keep that at 73 and a half, we would need to pave we would need to double that, or close to double that road miles. And based on we opened bids for our asphalt last week. Prices did go up, but not as drastic as we anticipated, so they went up about 7%. So based on the increase that we got this year, which I think is 7.3 million, we should be able to hit that 45-mile target that we kind of have traditionally set. So,
Thank you.
thank you, ma'am.
And I also, and everything so far has been questions, but I did want to compliment Mayor Jacobs. He made a commitment 8 years ago that he was not going to raise property taxes, and it's refreshing to see a politician actually keep their promises, and ran on what he stood for and has stood by what he ran for. So I really want to thank you very much for what you've done with that. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any other questions, comments? Director Caldwell, thank you and your team for your tireless work and you put in this budget. Our next budget hearing is June 15th at 3 p.m. And if there's no further questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I've got a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Have a good evening.